Hello and welcome. It's here that I'd like to document the progression of geometry sings from its inception through its iterations to its final outcomes that realize my goals to depict the sublime or the infinite. Say in September, at the onset of this project, I was deeply fascinated by research into hyperbolic geometry and symmetry. There's these three references here. The first one is Circle Limits 4 by M.C. Escher, otherwise known as Heaven and Hell or Angels and Demons. But it follows a geometric discipline which is hyperbolic, and in this hyperbolic space these tiles extend to infinity, and that's something that I really wanted to probe and utilize within my own artwork. And something that really instilled this into me is this video here, which is a lecture given on this article here. And it was really fascinating because in my life I've striven for aesthetic beauty through tiling and symmetry, and I've done these types of tilings and symmetries which would be called Euclidean or wallpaper symmetries, which is sort of reflection, rotation, those types. But they're all within a Euclidean geometry system, which is different to a hyperbolic geometry system. So I knew that from the onset of this project, I wanted to probe hyperbolic geometry as a means to describe or depict the infinite or the sublime. This is still from this lecture, which shows the experience of being on the psychedelic compound, which is in ayahuasca, and the different geometries that one experiences through that. And that's something that I probe later in looking at Pablo Amarindo's paintings. The third reference is this publication, which discusses the benefits of fractal patterns, self-similar geometries, and how through many experiments of showing different people different pictures of fractals with differing fractal indexes, they noted the positive response on physiological well-being, mental well-being on humans. And it also lays out that there's a scale to things. There's a fractal index, so something can be somewhat fractal or very, very fractal or very, very self-similar. There's a sort of graph where the less fractal, the less physiological benefits, and then it sort of picks up and then it drops off. So the more fractal or better, until a point where it gets too complex and too overwhelming, and then the effects drop off again. And it's this drop off which I'm choosing to be fascinated within this body of work, Geometry Sings, because in trying to depict that which is inconceivable or biblically accurate angels, or things that are sort of Kant's mathematical sublime, things which are awe-striking in their complexity or overwhelming subject matter, I wanted to instill within my viewers this feeling of awe and shock, which is on the tail end of where things are getting so complex that they're hard to decipher, which is something I'll touch back on in the future. This then developed into a very iterative process where I started playing with hyperbolic tilings of different things. So I started with these are sound waves from a collaboration I did with John Stuart Reid, a commission in 2021 for Apples and People, the Bulmer Foundation. I created a musical score to the sound of an apple crunch, and we looked at how that was changed by the DNA structures of the apple, changed the sound of the apple crunch, which is crazy. But started with that, and I go back to look at how sound looks later. But then I played with the Mandelbrot set, fractal set, and then I started creating my own pastel works, and then refracting them through the Poincare disc or hyperbolic tilings. This was my first piece, Hyperbolic Sakura. Then I moved on to do this. This shows the iterative process of doing the same mathematical iteration to itself. So this is one iteration, and then this put through the same iteration, and then again, and then again, and then again. This is my final outcome for that. And as you can see, I've selected number 3 iteration in this series because number 4, there were too many eyes, there were too many holes. It seemed too complex, and it wasn't as aesthetically pleasing to me as this one. So, I refined it, and that was my final piece in this series. At the same time, I was working with virtual hyperbolic geometries or virtual fractal geometries, which are seen here. and here. And these were resin printed, and this was animated. I'll touch on that in a bit. So then I did the same process as I did for all of these with another drawing I did of some sakura branches, a bit like this. And from that, I created this this tiling here. For Open Studios in December 2023, I combined these sculptures and put them in an arrangement inside an infinite mirror box with a UV light, and then underneath them I put this tiling. If you stare at it through this angle here, you can see the iterations going on and on and on. So this is just one shape here, but you can see it's reflected in these four. That got very good response from audience, being like, they were like, wow, like people would just, they'd peek into it and then they'd just be captivated, and they'd be there for sort of 20 seconds and surprised at how much was in such a small space. And I was really, really pleased with that outcome. And this is the same outcome in Open Studios 2, just in a different arrangement. And that got the same reception. The feedback was on that everyone wished that the box was bigger, or that they could put their head in the box. But you know, it's a lot harder to build a mirror room than just a box. So this is a virtual geometry iteration on the Mandelbrot set, and I took a still of it and then put the still through the same process as all of these, and that turned out that this piece and this piece is what I used on the bottom of the tilings for Open Studios 2. And here and here, and then to go one extra iteration on all of that, because I cycle between analog digital, analog digital, analog digital, constant iteration. I took a photo from here and put it through the same process as all of these, and created this tiling of tilings. So yeah, that's a description of these processes on this page. This is the first piece that I'd call a final piece, even though I've left it unfinished, which is this digital piece painted. And this was a very pivotal learning lesson or turning point early in this year, because I realized that I could not paint infinity. I could not, no matter how hard I tried, get these infinite iterations along the edges. And so I really like this piece as an emblem of failure, but also as an emblem of the inability to manually depict infinity, which essentially got me to decide that I should work digitally and to depict infinity, and then print that out. And that was the only way that I'd be able to realize these tilings in a way that I wanted, really. Escher showed immense skill in being able to draft this by hand. This is another picture, which is documentation of this piece here. Fear not, for thou hast found favor with God. Yeah, I described the process behind that, but there's a backlight behind this piece, and I like how the light shone through there. The positive reception of this mirror box piece at Open Studios, I really wanted to push this work further. It seemed quite stale and soulless and mathematical, and I really wanted to inject soul into it. So I did some contextual research on Pablo Amaringo and Eugene von Brunschenheim. This was because I wanted to use the patterns or the geometric processes to say something, to inject some humanity into it. These are oil pastels, which I did in reflection of my thoughts on the cosmos, existence, reality, dreams, and archetypes of the soul. So it's about the end of 2023, which I created these, and I finally settled through the process of pastel drawing in reflection to these two artists. I finally settled on souls, which I turned into a screen print, and then a digital collage of the screen print and the pastels all put together. And I wasn't happy with the color tonality of this piece, so I shifted it to blue, and this is one of the pivotal pieces of this body of work. I took this piece, and it was finally depicting souls, or a world which was beyond, or angels. Thus, I felt happy putting this through the iterative mathematical processes of hyperbolic tiling, which I had been doing everything else earlier. And this is what I settled on, and I was really, really happy with this. This is another pastel piece which I put through the same process, which I wasn't so happy with. It was close, but it wasn't exactly what I was going for. But I learned through all of the iterative processing and development of figuring out what I don't want and I do want in terms of color and form. And I decided that I wanted the form of dancing shapes, dancing figures, dancing souls. So this is documentation of Open Studios 1 in December. I had these 3 pieces, and then I had these 3 pieces, and this is primarily because I got usurped out of a place to do projections in the way that I'd like to, and I just decided to fledge out my body of 2D work further, and I did that through commercial parody. I like making a mockery of commercial artwork. It's interesting because this is a piece by Banksy, which is a defacement of a Hearst piece, which sold for 3 million euros. And this is another very commercially successful Banksy piece as well. And so I decided to put my own slant on them through the gaze of a beyond or a virtual, an inner world. So Sorry, the Thought You Ordered is currently out of this dimension. And I added some memes of interdimensional Wojaks. I also added a speech bubble from a different Banksy piece, the one in the gold frame. It was just it was a self-commentary of almost like the conventional commercial art world looking at my art and the art of visionary artists, which is very dense and sometimes overwhelming and packed with esoteric knowledge, which isn't immediately accessible. And this meme, fear not, for thou hast found favor with God. So it's kind of like a self-commentary or a meta-commentary, entering a dialogue between the commercial art world and the work that I was creating at the time. Does anyone take this kind of art seriously? The reception to that was interesting. I remember standing behind it and at Open Studios and someone saying, "Oh, that's so CSM," and for some reason that really irked me, and I chose to not go in this direction. I think that the main reason I chose not to go in this direction is because it was reactionary and it was derivative, and I already knew that I was embarking upon a creative path or a body of work which would be more unique to myself and was more personally fulfilling. But it was exciting to enter into this space, to do these things, to come to that conclusion. And then the final piece from Open Studios was the work. And I really, really like this piece. It's commenting on the commodification of artwork and how a lot of artwork sold at high ticket prices tends to just live in Geneva Freeport and has very intricate legalese in the artist resale contracts and things, which basically means that you never resell it, or you very rarely resell it, but you're constantly revaluing it so that you can take out lines of credit against it. I just love that I can poke fun at that. But in creating this canvas frame without canvas and calling it an artistic commodity, I was speaking to the potential in non-creation. But this was probably the work that got the most positive feedback, and I entered into dialogue with quite a few people viewing this piece who offered their thoughts on the commodification of art. That tended to be older people, actually. I really enjoyed this piece, but it wasn't part of the direction of the rest of my work, so I just benched it. I benched it as just a frame or something to revisit in the future. So I pursued a different line of inquiry, which was to develop this into something which wasn't just this big and a mock-up. It was a full-scale artwork which really spoke to everything that I was thinking and feeling at the time. So that's where N-Dimensional Souls 2 comes in, which is this piece, and I'm really, really happy with it. So in conclusion, I'm very happy with this piece, especially because the audience response or critical reception was that I was hoping for, which was oh my god, and looking closer and being really captivated or engaged by it in its physical presence, looking closely, realizing that it does go infinitely, and that this very simple pattern of two souls or two forms dancing iterates over itself, never the same but always similar. And that's exactly what I was going through with this body of work up to this date. So I was really, really happy with the realization of this outcome, but it did take a lot of iteration through different forms of analog process with oil pastels and through different forms of digital process through constantly iterating different forms and figuring out which worked and which didn't, and finally realizing that branching figures and more simple was better, because when it went through the tiling process, it became very complex. It didn't need to have the complexity already in it. So yeah, I was really happy with this piece.